Megan, and today I'm here to do my spring reading and review video. If you're not familiar, my reading and review videos are where I go over the past season's readings that I did. So I go over quickly every single book that I read over the past 3 months, and then I pick my top 5 favorite books from that season. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and start with March. Looking at the books too, I'm just about to say, March, one of my strongest reading months of the year in terms of quality books, I'm just saying. The first book I read in the month of March was Thunderhead, which is empty because Clay's reading it. Hey Clay. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously. I read Tempest and Slaughter by Tamora Pierce, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars to. Next was Children of Blood and Bone, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars to. So good. Next was The Wicked Deep by Shea Ernshaw, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Price Guide to the Occult by Leslie Walton, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars as well. And lastly, for the month of March, I read Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Moving on to April now, the first 2 books I read during the month was the first 2 books to The Immortals Quartet by Tamora Pierce. First one being Wild Magic, which I gave a 4 out of 5. And Wolf Speaker, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Shadowcaster by Cinda Williams-Chima and gave 5 out of 5 stars to. Perfection. Amazing. Next I read Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars to. And lastly, for the month of April, I read Obsidio by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now moving on to May, but now I'm looking at all the books I've since talked about, and narrowing this down to top 5 is gonna be so hard. But the first 2 books I read in the month of May was An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. Amazing. I gave 5 out of 5 stars to both of these books. Then I completed The Trials of Apollo, The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Everlast by Neal Shusterman, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I read The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars too. All right, starting in my top 5, this was so hard to narrow down. Honestly, I read so many books I could make my top 10 for the year, which makes me terrified to have to narrow down my favorites for the year because my goodness, I feel like I've read some really fantastic books this year. The first book I have to talk about though is Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. Scythe series has quickly rose to be one of my favorite series of all time. The second book was absolutely incredible, in many ways better than the first novel. Neal Shusterman's ability to craft a world that is both terrifying and relatable is just hats off, sir. This novel is set in a world where basically people can no longer die. Humanity has eradicated all evil things in the world, from poverty to death. So the only way people can die is with a scythe killing them. However, while you might imagine scythes have to be humble and compassionate, many of them are very greedy and filled with their own politics and selfishness. We follow our 2 main characters, Citra and Rowan, as they train to be scythe apprentices. These 2 books are incredibly political, will absolutely keep you on the edge of your seat, and I feel like the second book specifically really upped the ante and really involved the Thunderhead way more. It's almost too hard to give justice to how amazing the plot of these stories are. They're intricate, they're thought out, they have so much to say, and they're so fast-paced. They keep you on the edge of your seat the entire time. They're just incredible, and just the creativity behind Neal Shusterman's worlds, just next level amazing. Obviously, Thunderhead. Please read Scythe if you haven't. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is just a beautiful, delicious, and dark fantasy story that I read recently and just loved. This is set in the wilderness of Russia, and I want to say in the 14th or 15th century. We follow our main character who lives in a kind of like wooden house enclosure. Her father is the lord of a small town, and they have this house near the edge of the woods. The winters here are long and they are brutal. Because of that, people spend a lot of their times around the hearth telling stories. And a lot of times these stories that they tell are stories of old, from either the old religion or the folklore that has existed in this town forever. Vasya, our main character, loves these stories and in fact feels like she can kind of see a lot of the creatures that they describe around the town. However, after Vasya's mother passes away and her father remarries a woman who is very, very orthodox, she goes on a campaign to basically eradicate any of the old religion that exists in the town. When this starts to occur, a dark power and force begins to try to take over the town, and it's up to Vasya to basically save the day. This is a rich and beautiful fairy tale feeling fantasy story. I mean, the atmosphere that Katherine Arden's able to create is just mesmerizing. You can feel the cold in your bones. I'm not kidding. Also, it's just incredibly creative, and the first novel honestly feels just like the beginning. Like, this novel just kind of like set the foundation for all the adventures Vasya is gonna face, and I can't wait to follow along and read. The author also gives great justice to both the historical time period and a lot of the historical factors where this story takes place, but obviously reimagines things as this is a fantasy novel. It was great. Loved every second of it. So good. My next favorite book is Stormcaster by Cinda Williams-Chima, and this is the third book to the Shattered Realms series, which is the spin-off continuation of the Seven Realms series. As I say every time I talk about these books, please read Seven Realms first. The first 20 pages of this series ruins that entire series, so just read it first. You need the context. But this series is just absolutely incredible. Each book builds on itself so wonderfully. New characters are perfectly introduced and interwoven into the larger narrative and political tale. I mean, I just like, every time I go into a book, I'm like, oh, surely Cinda Williams-Chima can't top what she's done. And then she does it. I don't even know how it's possible anymore at this point. This is an incredible spin-off series. I honestly might even like it more than the original series. The characters, the politics feel so large, and the conflict feels so massive. I honestly don't know how she's gonna resolve it. It's just incredible. She's able to weave so many different perspectives together so beautifully that reading these books is just seamless. It's a seamless experience. One of my favorite authors of all time, one of my favorite series of all time. Loved it. Next is an incredible debut that everyone is talking about, as they should be, because it's just perfection, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is an amazing African-inspired YA fantasy novel. I mean, it is just everything I love in YA fantasy encapsulated in one novel, but also giving fresh perspectives to every single YA fantasy trope that I feel like I've come across. It's just next level. This follows our main character Zelly, who remembers a time when her land was enriched with magic. She could feel it in the air, she could feel it in the soil, until one day the evil king that rules the area took all the magic away and basically ruined her life forever. Now her mother is dead, and she essentially lives as a second-class citizen in the town that she has always lived in. However, one day her world changes when she literally physically runs into a runaway princess of this king who says she has the ability and the key to bring back magic to the land. This sets Zelly, this princess, and her brother off on an adventure all across this magical land to try to return magic. Again, as I said, this book basically captures so many things I love. I mean, we have a journey element, we have multi-perspectives and very dynamic perspectives at that, and just everything about this magic system is so cool and very, very unique, and the politics will keep you on the edge of your seat. It's just so good. And the last books I have to talk about are An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is an amazing series. I believe it's a quartet. I marathoned the first 2 books last month. I'll try to be brief, as I feel like I have endlessly talked about these books on my channels, but these are just an amazing Roman-inspired dual perspective fantasy story following an incredible cast of characters. Truly, truly gripping. An amazing world. I cannot wait for the 3rd book to come out. These books completely sucked me in and did not let me go. I just spent all of my time reading these books when I was reading them. They're just beautiful, amazing, action-packed, so much to say, political. Sabaa Tahir, you're a genius. Hey guys, those are the top 5 books I read this spring. Let me know down below some books you've read and enjoyed recently, as I would love to know. And I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye.